Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the summer series of the Property Couch podcast. Ben, we are in fifth gear, about to move into sixth. We are on the home straight here with some amazing stories in the rear vision mirror and some really cool ones still ahead of us. And today's is a ripper. We had a conversation with a very determined woman who has very, very, very good bloodlines around that determination. But it was just enjoyable. I've got to say, loved every moment of it. So what do you reckon, Ben? Let's go on over and have a little listen to the conversation we recently had with Marina. All right, Ben, we've got a very special guest today on this episode of the summer series. We are chatting with Marina Stojic. First of all, welcome to the Property Couch, Marina.
Thank you for having me.
I was a bit nervous about that surname. How'd I go?
Great. Nailed it.
Spot on. Thank you. Well, thanks for putting your hand up to come on to yet another series of the summer series on the Property Couch, where we are focusing on money transformation stories. And you have that. We know that there is a significant transformation for you. So to help our audience get to know you a little better, Marina, take us back to the beginning when you were growing up. What did that look like? Where did you grow up? What did the conversations look like over the dinner table with specific reference to money?
So I'm from Melbourne. I grew up in Taylors Lakes, and money was a hot topic in my household. We spoke about it every day. My parents really got into the property game when they were early 40s. And when the mortgage broker would come around, me, my brother and his girlfriend, now his wife, would be sitting there listening as well. So we were really involved in everything to do with where our financial position was as a family, the years we made money, the years we didn't make money, the properties we were looking into, or my parents were looking into, why they were and why some decisions went well and why some properties we didn't do very well in. And it was always a discussion in our household. Nothing was sort of off the cards.
Yeah. And so reflecting on that, how did you find that experience? Because you had this tutorial happening in your lounge room. It would have been, did you embrace it, or was it something that you just took for granted?
A bit of a mix of both, because when I was a teenager, or even a little bit younger, I wanted to buy a Furby. And all my friends had a Furby. It was this toy. And my mum would say, okay, Marina, well, you have this much of your pocket money. You need to put some towards your investments, or, for your future, so that you can buy a property. Or you could also spend this money on a toy, which was, you're only going to have fun for, however long, and then you're going to grow out of it. You make that decision. So, but later down the track, I was like, just take my money and put it into a high interest account. But now I'm definitely super grateful. And I was really, really lucky because when I was a teenager, I got to see Robert Kiyosaki when he came down to Melbourne. And, my mum gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And we used to play Cashflow, which was Robert Kiyosaki's game. So,
There's so much in that. So I want to spend some time here. Here we go. So first of all, so your parents migrated to Australia?
Correct. I'm first generation.
First generation. Now they've come from Croatia. Now, obviously, at the time that they came across, there was a lot of conflict. It's fair to say, in terms of what was happening here. So I'm really interested because, we know, the numbers are that usually money is a taboo topic to be talked about in a household. And here we are sitting with you where money was discussed openly and decisions were made collectively. Where did your parents develop that? Did they come here with a good track record back home, or did they come here basically, just with a couple of suitcases and they needed to start out, and so together you were going to work as a family?
So my mum moved to Australia a lot younger, and she then became a single mother. And it was through that journey, being a single mother with my brother, which is where her interest in property investing really took off, because it was really important to be able to set herself up and, set the lifestyle for her and my brother up. So later, when she met my father, when he came to Australia, he just had the suitcase. And so their sort of relationship moving forward was that, this was mum's sort of forte and her expertise. And it was really important for her to, that we understood the value of money and how precious it was. And also that if we were ever in a position that we had to leave a relationship or in any difficult position, that we would be able to make that decision, and money wasn't the thing that was holding us back.
Now, did you ever ask her what her motivation was? Single mum, I'm assuming a professional job or just a standard career, because she's first generation in. What was she doing?
So she had actually dropped out of school.
Yep.
So she fell pregnant very, very young, quite young.
Yep.
So she went back to uni, became an accountant, and yeah, it was then, I think, she became a secretary and then slowly moved her way up. But the main thing that she always would say, it's not how much you earn, it's how much you save. And that's why every time I had my pocket money, I had to make that decision about where that money was actually going.
Now, did you know how close to the line you were in terms of single mum, raising that? Was money tight in the family, or was she, was that the reason why she chose property? Did you ever ask her that question in terms of, I needed a supplementary income, to basically get us ahead?
Yeah, so definitely I know that when we were, when I was young, that money was tight.
Yeah.
And, during the recession, everybody lost their jobs, and that's when my dad decided to start his business. And it was openly discussed about why we were looking to invest in property, and about, some sacrifices now, but for long-term gain with the capital growth and what that looks like in the future.
Marina, your mum's a legend, right? Because when you're a single parent, that is a tough gig at the best of times. And then she was actively investing in her mindset and her financial literacy, and then obviously moving her education levels to get better opportunities. So what an amazing woman. Never met her, but would love to. But it's interesting that you. My observation is that I grew up in the lucky country, and it's a blessing and a curse, because the blessing is because we take a lot of stuff for granted with amazing lifestyle. But the curse is because we're so separated from the rest of the world, we don't understand the perspective of how good we've got it. And I think with your mum, having that experience growing up in another country that wasn't necessarily as lucky as ours, means that when they land on our shores, they just see the opportunity and they don't waste it, and they dig in and do the things that your mum's done, which is an amazing. And then that has amazing on-flowing legacies for you and your brother as well. So I know you speak very highly of your mum, but have you reflected much on the fact that tenacity and that willingness that your mum demonstrated to get ahead in circumstances that are challenging for a lot of people? What is your reflection on that?
That's practically what drives me. She's overcome some massive obstacles, and she's completely kicked ass, if you don't mind me saying. And it also, it feels like it empowers me, and I feel like it also, I love sharing her story, because I feel like it empowers so many other women, especially. And the reason I say women is because they're, being in such a really difficult position, and then still being able to, with the pay gap and, not as many opportunities, being able to still make her way up. And then sort of, now we're in a position where money isn't an issue in my household, and we're in a really, really comfortable position now. And it's all because of my mum.
Yeah, because what we're saying with the summer series and anyone that we interview, we ask that question, tell us what the discussions were like over the dinner table. And it's to try and flesh out the stories where yours, Marina, is a highlight of what happens when you have these conversations over the dinner table. It has generational flow on. So you're having conversations about this over the dinner table, and it's got this generational flow on with your own circumstances, which we'll lean into shortly. But when you were a kid, did you ride the highs and lows of it as well? Because the transparency was enormous. But did you get to see? You talked about it being tight during the recession. What was the atmosphere in the house like during some of those more challenging times? Was it fully transparent there, or was there a little bit of filtering?
Fully transparent. Yeah, we would be across the decisions made in the household. So, if we had to, like, if there was a good year, it wasn't that didn't mean we get to splurge. It meant that the conversation was, okay, now we need to put the money aside so that if next year, we don't get that much work in Dad's business, we've got those funds and we can still live comfortably. So, yeah, definitely across all the waves. But in saying that, I never felt like I missed out or anything. We didn't have a mindset that money was bad or anything like that. It was more just, I guess, being like realistic and understanding the value of it and what we can do with money, and also that it doesn't have a direct link to happiness. It's more about, being comfortable. And if there was a family emergency or a health issue, that, you had those funds there to support you. But, we could do other things for fun rather than spend money.
It's so important to understand that money is just a commodity. It isn't the be all or end all for everyone. It's not going to create the happiness that everyone expects it to at a certain level. I look at it sort of similar to farming, right? Where you've got, you sell enough grain that obviously brings in, but you keep, some grain in the silo for the reseeding for next year so you can make more grain, right? So it's that type of principle. Now, Marina, I'm really interested in what age were you when this all started making sense and this dialogue was happening? Were you sort of early teenage years, mid-teenage years, or late teenage years where it was, you were completely immersed in the whole program?
I would say around that sort of soon after we bought the Cashflow game. I don't know if you've ever played Cashflow, but it's Monopoly on steroids.
Yeah.
And
Did you get out of the rat race?
Yeah.
Yes. And you know what? And then you learn that you want to be the janitor. You want to have the profession that has the least amount of expenses. And that's where that's what really taught me. And that's when the sort of penny dropped about why I was doing all of this, why I was listening to these conversations, why I was putting money aside. And I remember, so embarrassing now after reflecting, but like my first interview for a job, and they said, oh, so, you want to work here? And I was like, yeah, I just need cash to service my assets. Like I want to get out of the rat race. I want to, be living off all the positive gearing and to cover my expenses. So, the reason I'm applying for this job is for cash.
Now, how old are you at this stage? Is 16, 17 or part-time job?
Oh, no, this was for my first professional career job.
That's what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
It's all about the cash.
Yeah. I was 19 at the time.
Oh, okay. There we go. So it gives us context. Very good.
Yeah. I did start working when I was 13.
Yep.
The 13, 9 months. But yeah, when I dropped out of uni, I have dyslexia. So hence it makes sense now why that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then when I went for my first real sort of career job, that's what I said.
Right, now I want to get into the career job, but you did give us a clue about the wins and losses for your parents in the property game, in terms of what they were doing. Now it sounds like they were doing the cash flow positive property, following the Robert Kiyosaki model, where you don't take on too much debt or it produces income from day one. So tell us a bit about the wins and losses and what you took away from from watching your mum and your dad execute on their property strategy?
So I wouldn't say the properties are in positive or have ever been. It's always been as soon as it becomes they're sort of equal. Neutral. It's time to buy. Yep. Yeah, neutral. It's time to buy the next property. So the end game has always been that later in life, when they're ready to retire, they can sell a few and then live off the positive cash flow from that. So where we've seen like the wins and losses is where decisions on purchasing a property in a particular area and whether that has increased or not increased, and decisions that they could have made better decisions, or they've done their research but then still decided to go with the safe option, but really they actually did do enough research and should have gone with that option.
So what takeaways, sorry, I'll just finish off that. What takeaways, so have there been any observations like established areas versus new areas, off the plan, new properties versus existing property? Tell us a little bit about those insights.
Okay, so there's sort of like some just golden rules, and I think a lot of those have also come through your podcast, and things like definitely within 20 k's of the city, established, not purchasing brand new properties where you're going to lose a lot because you're paying for brand new, as much land as possible, and looking at where are they in the better streets of the suburb, is there a big power pole in front, or looking at the location within the location, also if there's potential with that property as well. So is it something that can be developed on later, or is there an easement going through it, etc., taking those things into consideration. As you see with what I've done with the units, making sure it's not in a complex more than 10 units. Also that some of the older units, those sort of double brick, strong,
well built structurally,
bunker style, nothing's going to happen to them. Those are the ones that you would look at. So I guess over time you slowly just start picking at things and start learning and just taking that in.
Nice. And Marina, just to round out, for those people that haven't played the cash flow game, the premise is really simple. There's two tracks. There's the rat race in the middle, and then there's the fast track on the outside. And I loved what you said before, and it may have been something that someone may not have picked up if they haven't played a lot of the game, but you said, I learned that I want to be the janitor. And that's a powerful message, because, and I think in the context of our community and the lessons that Ben and I are trying to teach, that quite often you'd think you'd want to pick up the card that had the doctor or the lawyer, but it was fool's gold at time because they had enormous expenses that came with the enormous salaries, whereas the janitor was a bit more frugal and there was a bit more opportunity. And the aim of the game was really simple. Get your passive income to be greater than your expenses so that you could get on the fast track. And then once you did that, things start to exponentially grow. And I think you just say it and you had a little cheeky grin. If anyone knows. But this was a game that you were learning amazing life skills with your mum over time that you could apply. And then clearly that manifested itself when you were 19 on your first job. Show me the cash. But I think ultimately that's what Ben and I are trying to encourage people to do. Build a portfolio that allows you to have a passive income that's greater than your expenses so that you can actually not have to trade your time for money. So I just wanted to make sure that some of the lessons that come from that amazing board game, even though there are some American lessons in it that don't apply to Australia, but generally speaking, the bigger picture is a wonderful opportunity. Hey, so budgets then. So what did budgets look like for you then, with all of this wonderful conditioning that you had in your house? Was there a system? How did you budget your money? And then when you were independent, did that translate comfortably, or was there a few clunks along the way?
Yeah, definitely some changes. So yeah, Mum's very, very thorough, and she had a spreadsheet sort of set out for me, and how much money was coming in. I would budget for how much I would be spending for that month. And then later we would return and see how much I actually spent and, what were my doodads, which again, from the cash flow game, expenses. And it was quite thorough, and I guess it sort of just becomes a part of life. Like you get so used to that you're taking that into consideration, and it's not something that you sort of, it's not holding you down, because it just becomes a natural sort of process to be considerate of how much you have, how much you're going to spend, and how much you're going to put away. But as I sort of got a little bit older, I'm definitely not that thorough as my mum. And instead I took the whole, these are my investments, and this is how much money I need to put towards my investments and for my bills. And when I get paid, that money comes out first. All of my essential expenses come out, and then that's what I've got left to play with. And then from there, I break out a point that is for, for holidays, or, when fun things come up and I want money. And then whatever's left over, that's me for the week, fortnight, or for the month.
And what are the mechanics of this? So you've got separate bank accounts. What's the actual day-to-day running, what you just described?
So literally have a savings account, my complete access, which is on my card. And then I have a separate accounts for my properties. And so the money goes all on the properties, put that little bit in the savings, which is really for holidays, etc. And then it's complete access. And also, before I get my next pay, whatever's left over in my complete access then goes either into my savings or back onto the properties. So I don't sort of then spend more, because then you sort of get used to being able to spend more, and sort of keeping myself with this is my limit.
Now you found the My Wealth portal over a year ago. Tell us how you came across it and discovered it, and what has it meant for you in terms of, as you're saying, you didn't want to be as intense, time rich as what your mum is with her spreadsheets and so forth. What is using that platform allowed you to do, and how has it improved the way in which you organise your money?
So my husband and I, we started listening to the Property Couch, and we did want to start looking at what our next step was, and that was that we wanted to buy a home. And listening, then I decided to look into Money Smarts, and we filled it out initially, and we didn't have much surplus cash for the year. And obviously there's the two sort of columns of essential and discretionary. And initially we put almost everything in essential. But then really having a look at that, and sort of really considering and being really truthful about where our money is going and where we want to spend our money. It sort of just, I guess, opened our eyes to, where is our cash going? Where is our fortnightly wage going? And truthfully, a lot of it was going on food and drinks. And especially with, when we went in before the pandemic, every week, you're working in the city, you can stay out in the city. And so that really just made it, I guess, it just put it in categories that we could easily sort of identify. This is really important. This is not that important. Should we really be spending our money here? Is that where we really want to spend it if our goals somewhere else?
So you go through that, you basically gather, sort, calculate. You have a little bit of a moment, a little bit of a really. You set up your banking, your surplus is not looking great. So you go back and you start to think about, hence critical, important, so hence the discretionary and essential. What did that allow you to do in terms of when you then saw, your targeted surplus? When you saw that targeted surplus that you readjusted for, how much additional surplus money were you then planning to save compared to the first run, that you saw? Was it thousands of dollars?
It was a lot. So what actually happened is we weren't sure. We weren't sure what we needed to do. So we had all these figures in there about what we were spending, but we knew approximately how much we wanted to spend on the property, but we didn't know what we needed for the banks and what we needed to do for our lifestyle to be able to buy that type of property and service it ongoing. So that's when we searched for a savvy mortgage broker. I did have a mortgage broker, but I needed somebody who could sort of actually give us some advice around, if this is what our goals are, and this is sort of what even after this property, what we're looking for, what do we need to do?
Yeah. So ultimately, you're trying to get that cash flow view, aren't you? That's right. That future cash flow.
Yeah. And so we asked this savvy mortgage broker, okay, so with our wages, what would the banks expect the spending to be? And it was about half of what we were spending. So I think initially our surplus was about 40,000, and it is now just under 100.
Wow. That's what is that? 250%.
We've made massive adjustments, and it's taken a year of doing this, of really completely changing the way that we are living. And now we're in the groove and we're not missing out. There were a few debts that had to be paid, and sort of once we sort of got over those hurdles, and I guess the pandemic also helped, not having as many outings, but also in saying that moving forward, coming out of the pandemic, if we are, we're in the right groove now that we're used to how much we spend.
Wow, 40 to 100. That is significant. And so tell us, what about some of the subtle adjustments? You're doing a 7-day float. Are you doing a 7-day float? You're doing non-discretionary on the credit cards, sort of checking in once a month. How's that tracking for you?
So we have moved everything to one account of where we both spend our money. Nice. And that is so we can actually see where the money is. And I know that, potentially spending on the credit card and then having your cash sitting in your offset, there's benefits there, but we're not at that stage yet. And really it's more just, we need to be able to track where our money is going. Things like parking add up very easily. Uber Eats, humongous, one night of Indian food is $100, and you do that once a week. When I can, we can cook or make smarter decisions about what we're eating during the week. We were spending a lot on food, a lot on alcohol, a lot on going out, and just, not going out with a budget. And I think that's where we would overspend, and then after a few drinks, you want to shout everybody. And so, and making a conscious decision before we go out. This is our limit for going out. Also, my husband is from Wollongong, so his family is there, and we're flying up there a lot. And a lot of times as well, we were spending quite a lot on flights because it's a last minute decision. We want to go, and it sort of doesn't matter how much it costs. We're going to pay that. So making those, being more considerate with, how much we're going to pay for our flights and how much are we going to spend when we're there. So now what we do is we actually take out cash. And so that's the cash that we have for our trip, and that's all there is. So you can't just tap. So that those were some of the changes.
Yeah, there's a few things there because the tap is the enemy of everyone's budget. So let's be clear on that. And it's one of the hopes for us with Money Smarts is people go from being unconscious spenders to conscious spenders. And you just used that word because you said that all of a sudden you analyzed that the Indian was costing $100, whereas before you probably didn't have that awareness other than it was just money that you spent. And the fact that you consciously know now how much you spend on going up to Wollongong means that you are now more conscious about any deals that come up and more conscious about when you should fly. And so I just want to reinforce that point to our community that do adopt the Money Smarts system is we make the claim that you will never unconsciously overspend ever again. So we don't say you're never going to overspend ever again, but we do say that you will never unconsciously overspend ever again. And I think that it's just been reinforced by what you said, Marina, because it really does give you, to borrow Ben's term, the flags to swim between. Because if you know where the lifeguard is on duty, you're not going to stray outside of that, and it's effectively a metaphor for what you and David have been doing in your own life.
Yeah. I must say, I know that it was a really big jump, but there was quite a lot of changes that happened, like even refinancing the loans to get better interest rates. Like that made a massive difference, because I had paid LMI in both of my units originally. So my most recent loan, I was paying almost 6% interest. So now that I was able to show that I've got 80%, etc., and interest rates now. So that's also made a big difference. So it wasn't all just purely saving. It was also just actually consciously looking and being like, I don't even have to I have to sign a few papers and I'm saving thousands of dollars.
Well, consciously looking for the margins, right? So margins everywhere. And again, that's why you've chased an investment savvy mortgage broker to help you with that. So clearly you're in control of the day-to-day, so that you've got this surplus. So tell us about the property journey for you. What did your first property look like? What was the mindset going through it? Were you and your partner on the same page? Give us a bit of insight into that first purchase.
So I purchased my first property when I was 20 years old. I bought a little 1-bedroom villa unit in Seddon for $230. I paid X, with the XYZ. So it was at the bottom of the market, so I got it quite cheap. And I ended up living in it for 6 months for the first homeowners grant, which, mind you, I got audited for. And the auditor said, "Oh, so did you live in it for 12 months?" And I was like, "No, I definitely lived in it for 6 months." He's like, "So not 12 months?" I'm like, "Definitely lived in it for 6 months." He's like, "Okay, well, now you have to return half the grant that they gave me." Oh. They gave me the grant for as if I lived in it for 12 months.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know there was different rules. Nobody told me. Oh, well, yeah, I didn't know.
Well, to be honest, I thought it was the minimum of 6, so therefore I'm out of the first home buyer market there, Ben. So
no, it's always 12. With we get mixed up with the 6-year rule, or basically, how long you have to live in a principal place of residence. But for first home buyers, it's
within the first 12 months you got to live in it, and then
you've got to live. That's
4
true.
6 months.
Yeah. Okay. So
you're just proving that to be not the case. So there you go. Beware, folks.
Beware.
Look under the bonnet on the first homeowners grant.
Yeah, and obviously things have changed. That was back in, was it 2012?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if the rules have changed, but
we'll check that out. We might even do that whilst we're recording, in terms of, so we finish off this episode with that information, because 12 months earlier on, but I think Bryce might be right. I think it is only 6 months now.
Yeah. And so apparently there was 2 different type of grants, if you lived in it for 6 months or you lived in it for 12 months. But I thought it was the same.
And there was a bonus and a grant. Okay, rightio.
Yeah, and they paid me for the 12 months one. Yeah. When I was audited, I was like, "No, I was definitely there for 6." He's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yep." He's like, "All right, well."
So that's your first purchase. So your second purchase?
So my second purchase was 2 years later. I was 22, and I used the equity. So the market had
moved forward.
Used the equity to purchase my second property. Both properties I paid lender's mortgage insurance. I didn't actually have any cash for this second property. Also, I paid $370. It was a 2-bedroom unit in a complex of 10 in Yarraville, and my mortgage broker told me that I could only spend $340,000, and I was at auction. And I got excited, and I had my dad next to me, and my dad was tapping me on the side. He's like, "Keep going." And it was like me v this other daughter father combo.
Oh no.
And I was like, "Yeah, put my
It
hand up.
becomes about the dads.
And then my dad taps me again and he's like, keep going. I was like, all right, I got this. Anyway, I won.
Bigger. Yeah, well done.
Signed on the dotted line. I paid Z, so I paid top price for this unit now.
Yeah.
And maximum in my head was 340. And I was like, all right, so Dad, you're going to help me? And he said, no.
Oh.
He's like, this is your purchase. And I was like, what?
You tapped me.
What? And so that's my dad has taught me a couple of lessons like this, mind you. So I had to go to the mortgage broker, and we had a line of credit set up and a credit card set up with a home loan. I was paying top dollar for it all, and I did definitely learn my lesson that my money is my money, and if I've set myself a limit, I need to stick to that limit no matter what.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Way too many lessons in that. Hey, I've just gone onto the website, Ben, the Victorian website. You, or at least one applicant, must occupy the home as your PPR for at least 12 months. There we go. So, commencing within 12 months of settlement of completion of construction. So there you go. I'm out of the first home owner market, and I'm suitably corrected. But there's a cautionary tale there. So is the lesson there, Marina, that no one should take their dad to the auction?
Well, it was so I had been listening to all these things from a really young age about property and all of that, and I had actually done quite a bit of research beforehand, and I wanted to buy a property in Sunshine West, and that property sold for 370. And my family, and everybody, even the real estate agent was talking me out of it, being like, Sunshine West, shouldn't do it. You've already done well with your one bedroom. Why wouldn't you just sort of replicate? And I decided to follow everybody's advice. And now I am kicking myself. And that's why with this most recent purchase, I'm backing myself with what I think is right. And I know that I can do my own research, and I'm making the decision for myself. Me and my husband together.
And land is in the equation.
Yes.
Tell us more.
So we are looking for a home, but even though we're looking for a home, I can't help but want to also make sure it's a
investment grade.
Yeah, exactly. Investment grade. And I'm like so conscious that I'm so emotionally attached when I was looking at the property, but I was like, try and step back. Is this actually a good property? So during in Melbourne during the pandemic, prices have just been increasing. So we've sort of had to start looking further and further, but wanting to make sure it's within 20 k's of the city. So we've looked at Avondale Heights. You've got Essendon and Aberfeldy right there, and they've already been quite high for a long time. And I feel like this is just that sort of flow-on suburb. I think you guys call it, is it the cousin?
Ripple effect.
Yeah.
So Ben, what's your advice, Ben? It's a ripple from your place there.
Yes. Moonee Ponds, Essendon, Aberfeldy. Aberfeldy's on the other side of the street that I live on. So, yep.
There you go. So we found some land or property, 850 squares in a really nice street. The property is quite run down, a little bit run down, but we're getting the land. So compromised on the property for the land. And we also paid top dollar due to this market.
Yeah.
But in saying that, in comparison to that land with the suburbs next to us, we're actually paying, a lot less per square. So yeah, we did our research on where we want to buy, but also because we're wanting to live in the property, is it easy for me to still be able to get to the station, to get to work, and does it have the amenities that we want? And ticked all those boxes.
Congratulations. That's so exciting for you. And
thank you.
So tell us a bit more about, if we lift our eyes, what's the big picture for you? What are you aiming for with your portfolio? Clearly, there's a strong pedigree towards getting out of the rat race. So have you defined what that looks like for you and David?
Yeah. So our next goal would be is to decrease this home loan where we're quite comfortable, and then look to purchase our next investment and sort of do a very similar sort of setup to my parents, where it would be, every time we hit neutral, it's time to purchase again. That's the position we're in just before we bought this property. And though we can't negative gear on our own home, that will be the goal, is to decreasing the home loan and trying to get the funds or equity out of the other properties if we wanted to buy our next investment.
Look, it's a great news story because it's a classic property ladder story. It's a classic, you've been able to retain each of the two properties that you bought prior. So David's obviously the beneficiary of that as well. And now you're setting yourself up with, as you say, you've got the land. It's not necessarily the perfect home. So you've had to compromise, based on our buyer's decision quadrant. You've gone for land and location, price point, but ultimately you've got to, you're going to embark on, making that a dream home where you can create your memories in. And then it is about, as you say, retiring out that non-deductible debt, and then getting out the other side of that, thinking about family, thinking about, sort of starting those types of things. So the next phase for you is you've got the big rock in the jar. Now it is about sort of working through that. So, all credit to you. In terms of, for me, my final question is around what has this allowed you to do? Like, what sort of confidence, what sort of peace of mind have you been able to get from, executing the way that you have, Marina?
Definitely that, if something happens, massive happens, health reasons or something like that, I can sell a property and I've got access to cash. And it's just more that reassurance, that we have something to fall back on if anything does happen. I guess that's what the money does, and sort of setting ourselves up for this, even buying this last property, because we haven't had to sell. If one of us lose our jobs, worst comes to worst, we can sell one of the units, to keep us going. Beautiful.
Yeah, very nice. My last one for you, Marina, is around, you were raised by a powerful woman. You're clearly a powerful woman yourself. What about the merging between you and David of money stories? Was that smooth? Was there any clunk? Is there any differences? Did someone have to get did you have to, before you started dating, did you have to qualify off the rat race first before? What did that look like?
It's actually a big story, because we are very different. And, with his household, they did talk about money and salaries and what they spent their money on, but not necessarily about investing. It was always important to have a goal to be able to purchase a home, but not necessarily investing. And that's where there was a mindset difference, and also comfortability with debt. I'm extremely comfortable with debt. I feel like I've been living with debt, for a really long time, and you get used to that. Whereas David hasn't had that experience. And so earlier on in our relationship, once we knew it was quite serious, is making sure, I was actually getting him involved and understanding how much body corporate costs and these costs, and there's also rates, and, you need to buy a new split system. There's new rules, and, now we have to pay for this as an owner. And so he was sort of learning about all of this. But on top of that, he comes from a family of carpenters, and his dad's a builder. And so he was really interested in, when we were initially looking for a house that has perfect finishes, which is just, I was like, we can't afford that. Or if we could, we'd be moving out a lot further. And that's where the podcast as well really helped, because I would listen to a podcast and then I'd be like, oh, he should listen to this. Let's listen to this on our car trip. And then also just start having those conversations about what's actually really important for us. Like, does it really matter if we don't have the right finishes? Does it matter if our toilet is pink? You know, if we buy a house with a pink toilet, like, is that really important? And learning about, you know, what does history tell us about capital gains? Like when you look at that. So there was quite a bit of a mindset shift. And also how we spent our money. You know, David was used to spending, you know, you get paid and you spend your pay, not fully considering putting money aside for the future. But I was really lucky. I found the man of my dreams, and he was on board, to jump on board this train with me and learn, and was happy to sort of take all this information on board and also then apply it as well. And now we're definitely on the same wavelength. Now, like I said, we've got one card, and we know where all the cash is going.
Okay, so it sounds like you've got a great partner there who is on the same page as you. Was that always the case from the beginning?
Not exactly. So as I mentioned before, his spending habits were quite different. But on top of that, he had a few years of tax debt. So he had not been doing his tax, and that equated to over $75,000 of debt.
Wow.
So it was a really tough conversation, when he had to, when he disclosed it to me, it was really hard. And then also looking at his HECS and his car debt as well. And that is also sort of what triggered our whole, where are we spending money?
Getting serious about things.
How are we going to pay this back? And then on top of that, how are we going to then, if we're wanting to buy something in the future, how are we going to do that?
It is interesting, you talk about the really strong surplus income upwards of $100,000. It's very easy to have slippage when you've got that type of money coming in. But what's interesting in there is also, you've got this situation where there's this massive debt that's sitting down, that's just being trickily paid off. That's going to be basically a ball and chain around your leg, and it's going to keep continually costing you money. So when he opened up and showed some vulnerability around that, and you guys were getting serious, tell us about how you set up to smash that debt down.
So I did have a little bit of savings, but it was, all hands on deck. Like, this is our number one priority. Also, no bank would consider us when there's 3 years worth of tax debt, and it was because he was a subcontractor. So when you're not a PAYG, that money doesn't come out automatically, and you get that in your pocket. And if you're not in the routine where you're putting that money aside, that's how
or the GST.
That's how it adds up. Yep. And so it was all hands on deck, and we're both very lucky. We are high income earners. I would consider us being both over 100,000. But it was just, let's smash it out. How much money can we put aside every month to get this debt down? And that was our first priority in the first instance. But we were very lucky, because when we did start saving for our property, he did come into an inheritance that almost covered the debt. So it sort of equaled each other out. But it was still definitely a big change, I think, for his mindset as well.
So that's nice. It would have been nice to have it at the same time as learning about the debt, because you obviously, but the lessons that you learned around retiring out the debt is great. But can you take us to that place in your mind when you had that conversation, when David said, "Oh, by the way, let me tell you about something," with your background and money management paradigm that you spent a lot of time. Do you remember that? What was running through your head?
So it was really difficult, because he couldn't articulate exactly how much because he didn't want to look at it. So it was actually about, well, we can't do anything until we actually know what the figures are. We need to go to the accountant and find out and backtrack and put all these paperwork together. So really it was me then encouraging him and being there to support him to actually get the paperwork done so we could see how behind we were. And I think that was one of the reasons as well, you know, he thought it was really important to share this story because it happens to so many people in the same position, especially when you are a subcontractor and you're not having your tax come out. It's so easy just to get used to, you know, you do your tax return and then you owe that money. And then, you know, you don't want to look at it and you don't want to actually deal with it. And then another year passes. And, you know, now it's just, we're in a totally different, you know, way of living.
Well, the reality is, thanks to your discipline and your determination, you know, and the conviction that you have about, you know, building a better life for you and David into the future has really helped him, right? So, and, you know, if anyone in the community is listening to this, you're going to have to face these challenges. You're going to have to face these demons. Otherwise, they will always be there, you know, so please don't put your head in the sand. These are honest discussions, and it's people like you and David who share that story that sort of say, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who's done this, but please take action and fix that, because when you do get out the other side of it, look what's possible. Look what you've been able to achieve. So we appreciate you sharing that story.
It's definitely made us stronger as a couple.
Yeah.
You know,
no doubt.
Working together through that. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
And you're a fabulous encourager. So someone has just heard that, Marina, and a light has just gone on for them. And I think the weight off your shoulders of actually chatting about it, having a plan, and then ultimately the feeling of when you've knocked it on the head is something that you can testify to. But someone's just heard that who can relate to it and went, I think I need to do what Marina and David did.
Yeah.
It is the best feeling when you have retired that debt, as you call it. When it's closed off, it was like, you know, winning a race. Feels really good.
And the first step, as you discovered, when, you know, you had different money habits, you got onto the platform, to the My Wealth portal, you set up your money smarts, and it showed you, you know, visually, basically, this is our situation. And this is where we've got all of our slippage, which is going to firstly retire that debt and then start to build out our dream. So I think that's also a powerful message in there as well.
You two are going to be very powerful as a couple as well. So my last one is a question for you, Marina. So I put the call out and said, come on to the summer series and share your money transformation story. So what's the message in your story that you really wanted to share the most? What's the main thing that you wanted to land to our community about everything that you've experienced that we've just talked about? What's the one or two things that you really want to land?
That I want to, hopefully my story will potentially encourage somebody to take action. And, you know, there's a TED Talk. It's called Why 30 is the New 20 by Meg J. So I wrote that down. And I really think it is, you know, if you are, you know, a teenager or younger, have a listen to it. And it's just, I feel like I'm in a position now where, you know, David and I were able to take these steps because of some of the decisions I made earlier. And I know it doesn't matter what age, but it's all about getting your foot in and making informed decisions. And then, you know, for a long time, there was no equity, mind you, for a long time, and I was paying extremely high interest rates. It was flat. But, you know, 10 years later, it has paid off. And being able to just keep up with repayments, it has paid off. So I'm hoping, that my story will encourage people.
Yeah, it will. Hey, we're going to put that link in the show notes for that TED Talk for anyone who wants to listen to that, because it was powerful for you. So let's make sure we share it for others. But Marina, I love summer series for conversations with people like you. I've thoroughly enjoyed every bit of your story. I appreciate the courage and the determination that you've displayed, not only in your story to get to here, but also coming on and sharing it with other people. What I do know, and what Ben also knows, is that the most powerful parts of our podcast are people like you telling it how it is, so that people can take a little bit away from your story and hopefully implement it. And that's your goal. So I really want to sort of applaud you for that. And, on behalf of everyone here on the Property Couch here in the summer series, thanks for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks, Marina.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Ben.
Bryce, we often talk about, the mooring lines, the anchors, the challenges we have when we don't talk about money at the dinner table. Yeah. Well, this one flips it on the head, completely flips it on the head in terms of see what happens when people are having open dialogue about money, about wealth building. You get clear money insights, you get systems and processes in terms of how to do that. Not necessarily still amateur in terms of approaches and learning that was going on, but an interest in the subject matter and an effort in terms of, and so she buys her first property when she's 19, right? So now, of course, again, and we're not talking about that was, 20 years ago, like you and I, or 30 years ago, like you and I. It is what it is, right? So there is ways to get there, and determination rings true. And that's the story for me when I look at this. This is a property ladder story. It's organizing the finances. I'm definitely going to check out that TED Talk from Meg Ray. I think that'll be in the show notes. And just total conviction to the program that this is going to end well. There is no other way this is going to end. This is going to end well. So, I thank you, Marina, for sharing, because this is what success looks like. Again, we're mixing it up, the summer series, what success looks like, what actionable takeaways you can get, clear determination wise. Still, partner having that big debt, whack, but still making it happen. Determination.
Yeah, determination. And she has an amazing mother who has risen from being in a circumstance where she was a single mum raising her family, and then just has showcased and modeled beautifully to Marina and her siblings what that looks like.
And some lessons from Dad too there, and Dad did a pretty good job as well. Let's not forget Dad in the second part of that program.
No, particularly at auction, right? But hey, a couple of things. I loved the references to Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow game there. I think there's some really strong metaphors, but my favorite quote from Marina was, then I realized I wanted to be the janitor. And unless you've played that game, that doesn't really land beautifully. But it's because the janitor is more likely to have expenses that make it easier to get out of the rat race than the lawyer who has an extraordinary amount of expenses, which was really insightful. And I really loved it. And
everyday Australians can take huge takeaways.
Huge takeaways. It doesn't discriminate. You can have a crack. And also the fact that she mentioned that she was dyslexic, but she's overcome. I just loved every moment of that. So thank you, Marina.
Wonderful.
It was an absolute an absolute pleasure even for us to hang out with you today on the series, mate. So we have the home straight insight, Ben. We have got another couple of awesome summer series episodes coming up, mate. So until then, get educated. Why don't you think about grabbing the Armchair Guide to Property Investing? So go to that website, real simple, armchairguide.com.au, or as we keep saying, everyone, makemoneysimpleagain.com.au. Check it out. I mean, there's a clue in everyone in this summer series that they're getting educated before they take action. So that's it. And of course, Bryce, knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. Well said, mate. See you next week, folks.
Hey guys, Bryce here again. Just want to catch you before you go and let you know, if you're new to our community, there are a lot of episodes to catch up on, but it's really important that you start from the very beginning at episode number 1, because episode 1 through to 20 share all of the foundational pillars and frameworks that you need to know to get the best out of listening to this podcast. So I'd recommend that you start there, and the little tip is to maybe start on 1.5 speed. Now, for those of you that are time poor and don't have time to go back from the beginning, don't worry, we've got you covered as well, because we've created a binge guide that goes through all of the details and makes it easy for you to read and get up to speed very, very quickly. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/fast track, you will be able to download that binge guide and you will be up to speed in no time. And whilst you're there, I've got a few extra goodies for you, because we have our top 5 frameworks that you'll learn on this podcast, as well as the Make Money Simple Again ebook, which will help you with the foundations of basic money management, so you'll have everything you need to succeed in building your own lifestyle design and getting the best out of this podcast. Now, just a reminder that anything that we cover on this podcast is not considered financial advice. We certainly recommend that you get your unique circumstances looked at by your individual advisor, and everything we talk about is just general in nature. To thepropertycouch.com.au/fast track, and you can go and get all those goodies and catch up right away.